All right. So next, what we're going to talk about or get into is the APR, or what you could call this. It's the well, annual percentage rate. Now, what's special about this as compared to, say, our interest rate that we're used to dealing with? And here, this is the formula. They define APR. Now, it's in terms of the interest rate, but why is it this? And notice that the principal doesn't appear in there at all. The key thing here, and they don't talk about it in the text, but if you do a little bit of online sleuthing, if you will, do a little research onto this, what you end up finding out is that if we think of interest as sort of like rent, or maybe even more loosely, the cost of borrowing money. So you could think of it like, let's say you're renting from a landlord and they have a regular monthly rent that they want you to pay, but then they might throw in some other fees like processing fees and things like this that get tacked onto your rent. So at the end of the day, your rent's going to be more than just the advertised rent. There's all these other fees. And for various reasons, and this probably has to do with some kinds of studies that are done within the United States, they conclude that if your interest rate on your loan is R, then the APR, in other words, the cost of borrowing this money, it's not just going to be affected by this interest rate, but it could be affected by other things like fees, processing fees, and things like this, which in effect is going to increase the cost of borrowing money. So through their research, through various persons' researches, this is the formula they come up with. So this can be fairly dramatic. So for example, let's say we have something like this. Suppose you borrow $1,000 at, let's say, something fairly, let's go with 9% interest. And we're going to make, now N is going to be the number of payments. So you can, again, this could be the kind of thing where, again, someone's gone through and studied how loans work. And they say, well, yeah, there's this interest rate, but there's all these other fees that are going to get attached. And so that's going to actually bump up the cost. And what we can do is we could take this, the rent that you pay for borrowing money, combine that with the fees, and we'll come up with a interest rate of sorts, or the final rent you're going to pay for borrowing this money, and has nothing to do with the principal. So this APR, this interest rate that represents the cost of borrowing money, here it is. So it's always going to have the number 2. N's the number of times number of payments we're going to make to pay this back. And so we're going to convert this to a pure decimal, 0.09, and then number of payments plus 1. And so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to pull up the calculator on my computer and go 2 times 12 times 0.09 divided by 12 plus 1. And if I hit enter, this is sort of surprising, but the APR, what we would actually expect, and this is probably, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing this is something having to do with how loans are handled in the United States. When you consider every other fees or costs you're going to have to manage for this loan, you're really going to be paying an interest rate of approximately 6.6%. And so I should point out that the APR, the actual number I get, let me back up a little bit here. It's actually 0.1661538 on my computer, which I'm going to approximate as a percent is 6.6%. And that's it. And so what this is saying, the lesson to take from this is if you have just an interest rate, the you could have other costs that in effect are going to raise the cost that you pay or the rent that you pay on borrowing money. And by law, and like this is in the textbook, but by law, this is supposed to be disclosed. So this looks like a much more attractive interest rate than this. But by law, this should be disclosed, at least within certain circumstances. So again, there could be some hidden fees that are bumping this up and things that other charges that consumers might pay. And so this formula they came up with, and the original formula was APR 2NR over M plus 1. This comes out of probably just a lot of research that basically on a kind of average, this is the formula you're going to use. So that's it for APR. If any questions about that, let me know.